Lorena Veyl was banished for painting the Dragon King bleeding. The sentence was delivered beneath the very wall that had caused it. The hall of painted victories stretched around her in gold, crimson, and disciplined fire. Every conquest of Hadren Ors covered a separate arch. Enemy towers falling, rival banners burning, noble cavalry advancing through smoke without hesitation. No soldier limped. No civilian reached for help. No dragon wing ever tore. Only Lorena's fresco had shown a king who could be wounded. Royal chronicler Selric Dune stood beside it with a bowl of black mineral paint resting in his pale hands. Behind him, court painters waited with long brushes. By royal judgment, Selric announced, Lorena Veyl is stripped of court commission, removed from the hall's historical registry, and banished beyond the eastern ash gate before nightfall. Lorena stood without chains. Selric had argued that restraints would make the court appear afraid of a widow with paint beneath her nails. At 47, she had learned how easily powerful men mistook stillness for surrender. Dragon King Hadren Ors watched from the black marble dais. His armor covered him from throat to wrist, though Lorena knew every scar hidden beneath it. She had painted them by lamplight years before, when he still trusted one person to look at his body without turning pain into weakness or worship. The court had never seen that version of him. Now it never would. Hadren's gaze remained on the fresco. You were commissioned to record the victory at Ember Vale. I did. You painted royal troops abandoning the southern road. They abandoned it. A murmur moved through the noble benches. Selric lifted one hand. The southern companies repositioned to secure the ridge. They left civilians beneath siege fire. Your interpretation is not the same as history. Lorena looked at the wall. Her painting showed Hadren on one knee in shattered armor. One dragon wing curved around 3 children and a wounded man whose face remained turned away. Fire covered the sky behind them. Hadren's side was open beneath a broken spear, and terror lived clearly in his eyes. Not fear for himself. Fear that his body would fail before the people beneath his wing could escape. Selric called that image destabilizing. The court called it humiliation. Hadren had called it treason. You painted me defeated, he said. I painted you protecting them. A king on his knees is not a victory. It was to the people who lived beneath your wing. His face hardened. For one reckless breath, Lorena remembered him without armor in her studio. Hadren had stood before her with his back bare, allowing her to trace the long scar beneath his shoulder blade. You are the only person who looks at these without asking how many men I killed, he had once said. Lorena had answered, Scars record what reached you, not what you destroyed. He had kissed her only after turning away from the unfinished portrait. That tenderness now felt crueler than hatred. Selric offered the bowl to the first painter. Cover it. Lorena stepped toward the wall. 2 guards lowered their spears. She stopped before their points touched her dress. Dragon-scale pigment cannot be corrected by burial paint. Selric's expression remained patient. Scale dust preserves heat. Nothing more. It preserves movement. Dragon-scale pigment did not remember beauty. It remembered motion made under heat, blood, and command. An old workshop superstition, Selric said. You know it is not. Hadren descended 1 step from the dais. Enough. The single word silenced the hall. Lorena faced him. You asked me to paint what happened. I asked you to preserve the battle. That is what I did. You preserved confusion, noble failure, civilian panic, and your courage. His jaw tightened as though praise had struck more deeply than accusation. I will not have my people remember their king broken. No, you would rather they remember you cruel. The silence afterward belonged entirely to Hadren. Selric dipped the brush into black paint. History cannot be governed by a widow's attachment to suffering. Lorena looked at him. History cannot be cleaned until only power remains. The brush touched the fresco. Black pigment spread across the painted children first. Then it covered Hadren's damaged wing. Lorena did not beg. She watched each stroke bury the only image in the hall, where ordinary people mattered more than royal posture. When the paint reached the wounded man beneath Hadren's wing, something inside her chest pulled tight. Orlan had died at Ember Vale. Selric's official record said her husband fell before Hadren reached the southern road. Lorena had never been permitted to see the field report or his body. She had painted the unknown man from scattered testimony, not knowing why the curve of his shoulder always felt familiar beneath her brush. The final black stroke crossed Hadren's face. Remove her name, Selric ordered. A court mason raised his chisel toward the signature carved beneath the fresco. The wall moved. Not the black paint. The image beneath it. The pigment did not rise for Lorena. It rose because burial paint had tried to cover motion. It could not erase. A low ember glow traveled through the dragon scale pigment and split the covering layer from within. Cracks opened across the black surface. Heat moved in the shape of a torn wing. The court painters stumbled back. Selric's bowl slipped in his hands but did not fall. Hadren descended another step. What did you put in the wall? Lorena never looked away from the burning cracks. Only what you allowed me to see. The black paint peeled from the fresco in smoking sheets. Beneath it, the younger Hadren moved. His painted body turned toward the falling fire. His damaged wing opened over the children. The spear entered his side, and the king's painted mouth formed a command no official record had preserved. Run behind me. The children crawled beneath his wing. Then the wounded man beside them lifted his head. The fresco had not yet revealed his face, but the painted hand braced against Hadren's chest wore a narrow copper wedding band marked with the Veyl family flame. Lorena stopped breathing. Hadren stared at the same hand. Selric did not look at Hadren. He looked at the wedding band. Royal chronicler Selric Dune moved toward the wall, with black paint still wet across his fingers. Burn the fresco, he said. For the first time, the command did not come from the Dragon King. 4 ember lines opened beneath the moving image. Ember Veyl civilian shield entered. Royal wing damaged. Unrecorded survivor marked. Field report altered. The wall had not accused Hadren of bleeding. It had accused the victory record of lying about who bled beside him. Selric moved toward the fresco with black paint still wet across his fingers. Painted motion is not admissible history, he said. Dragon-scale dust bends under heat. It repeats violence without preserving sequence. The royal firekeeper lifted a torch. Hadren did not look at Lorena. He looked at the copper wedding band painted beneath his younger hand. No one burns the wall. The firekeeper stopped. Selric's expression remained composed. Majesty, delay gives workshop superstition the appearance of evidence. It gives me time to see the man's face. Hadren had not withdrawn Lorena's banishment. The guards remained beside her, their spears lowered but ready. He was not protecting the widow he had condemned. He was protecting the uncertainty now threatening his official victory. Lorena stepped closer to the fresco. The painted man remained beneath Hadren's torn wing, his face still hidden by smoke and the angle of his lowered head. Only the wedding band showed clearly, copper darkened by heat, its narrow veil flame carved across the metal. Orlan had worn that ring from the morning they married until the army returned only his service cloak. She had never received the ring. The field report, Lorena said. Selric looked at her. You no longer hold the right to request royal records. Then let the king request the record that justified my sentence. Hadren's eyes hardened, but he turned toward the archive guards. Bring the Ember Veyl casualty report. Selric intervened. The original remains sealed under chronicler authority. Then unseal it. A silence passed between them. Lorena saw the first boundary. Selric had not expected Hadren to test. 2 archive guards left the hall. The fresco did not continue moving while they were gone. Its ember glow remained beneath the painted figures, preserving the final position it had reached. The pigment did not obey Lorena. It waited for the old command to return. The guards returned, carrying a narrow iron case. Selric opened it himself. The field report inside bore Hadren's war seal and Selric's chronicler mark. Each casualty had been entered by road, company, and time of confirmed death. Lorena searched until she found Orlan. Orlan Veyl, Southern Civilian Road. Death confirmed, before royal arrival. Body unrecovered beneath siege fire. She read the line twice. Hadren reached the southern road after the 3rd fire bell. The report placed Orlan's death before the 2nd. Selric held the parchment where the court could see it. The record is clear. Orlan Veyl died before the king entered the civilian quarter. The painted hand belongs to another man wearing a common copper band. The veil flame was not common, Lorena said, nor is a painter's grief reliable identification. Hadren descended from the dais and stood before the fresco. The painted scar beneath his ribs aligned with the scar hidden below his armor. He remembered that wound. Lorena could see it in the way his hand moved toward his side, then stopped. There was a man beneath my wing, he said. Selric answered carefully. There were several wounded civilians during the retreat. He held the broken spear away from the children. The fresco answered only when the ember glow reached the preserved movement again. The younger Hadren shifted his weight. Not a new scene. The next recorded motion. The wounded man's hand slipped from Hadren's chest and caught the damaged edge of his wing. He pulled himself upright long enough to push the smallest child toward the evacuation path. His face turned partially toward the painted fire. Lorena saw Orlan's Joe. The pale scar beneath his ear. The line of his nose before smoke crossed it again. Her knees weakened, but she did not fall. The report buried him before he died. Selric's voice cut through the hall. Heat distortion can compress separate movements. Scale pigment records. Motion, not chronology. Lorena faced him. Then compare the commands. Paint does not testify to time. Command do. She looked at Hadren. Ask the fresco for the last movement made under your order. Hadren's gaze remained on the half-revealed face. You cannot direct it. I am not directing anything. The pigment remembers motion made under command. Give it the command again. Selric stepped between Hadren and the wall. A reconstructed royal order would contaminate the record. Lorena understood the fear beneath the doctrine. Selric did not fear that the fresco would invent something. He feared it would continue. Hadren's voice lowered. What did I command at the southern road? Selric answered. Advance through the breach. Lorena looked at the painted children beneath Hadren's wing. No. Hadren's face changed. The memory reached him through the scar before it reached him through words. Move the civilians behind me, he said. The ember pigment brightened. The younger Hadren's painted mouth formed the same command. Orlan turned fully. His face appeared for one breath before smoke moved across it. He was alive. He was conscious. And he obeyed Hadren by lifting one child and staggering toward the evacuation line. The field report claimed he had already been dead for more than an hour. The fresco preserved his movement beyond that death. A second document slipped from beneath the casualty page. Not a field report, a survivor transfer column. Lorena Veyl's name had once been entered there. The original line remained visible beneath scraping marks. Civilian shield survivor. Transferred from Southern Road. Conscious at removal. A darker seal covered the final entry. Royal Chronicler Selric Dune. Survivor status removed. Casualty time amended. Transfer destination. Ash recovery column, sealed by Selric Dune. The field report had not only killed Orlan too early, it had hidden where the living man was taken. The survivor transfer column lay open beneath Selric's chronicler seal. Transfer destination. Ash recovery column. Hadren read the words once, then again. What is it? Selric folded one hand over the report. A post-battle ledger. Ember Veyl produced conflicting casualty accounts, displaced civilians, and soldiers separated from command. The column reconciled those records before they entered royal history. Reconciled, Lorena said. Or erased. You no longer possess standing in this hall. My husband's name gives me standing in the line where you buried him. The guards remained beside her. Hadren had not withdrawn the sentence sending her beyond the eastern ash gate. He held the report open because the lie now touched a scar beneath his armor. Unseal the destination ledger, he said. Selric did not move. Recovery columns contain witnesses whose statements were judged unstable under battle shock. Their names are sealed to protect the crown from contradictory testimony. Protect the crown, Lorena repeated, or protect the victory. A clean victory is not the same thing as a true one, Hadren said. Selric turned toward him. A kingdom cannot preserve every frightened account as equal history. Someone must decide which version will hold armies together. And you decided Orlan was dead before I reached him. I decided the report required one sequence. Hadren's hand tightened on the iron case. Open the ledger. 2 archive guards carried in a second volume bound in gray dragon hide. Unlike the gilded victory books lining the hall, it bore no title. Selric rested his palm on the cover. Ash recovery was not a ward. It was an administrative column. Lorena looked at the rows inside. Recovered civilian. Command witness. Noble desertion observed. Royal contact confirmed. Beside each surviving name, one of 3 marks appeared. Return to public record. Absorb into military casualty. Seal under chronicler authority. The column had not treated wounds. It had treated contradictions. Hadren turned the pages. Men and women pulled alive from collapsed streets had vanished into casualty totals if their testimony showed noble troops retreating, civilians abandoned, or royal orders disobeyed. Some returned only after their statements were rewritten. Others never re-entered visible history. Lorena found Orlan near the middle. Lorena Veyl, civilian shield survivor, conscious at removal. Royal command heard. Noble withdrawal witnessed. The final category had been pressed over his name in dark ash ink. Seal under chronicler authority. If this was recovery, Lorena said, why was every person who saw the Southern Companies flee removed from the survivor count? Selrick's expression remained composed. Because their testimony endangered military cohesion during an active campaign. They were civilians. They were witnesses inside a war. Hadren looked toward the painted arches. Every noble cavalry scene showed disciplined advance. None showed the Southern Companies turning away, while children remained under fire. My hall was built from this column, he said. Selrick did not deny it. Your hall was built from the version of Embervale the kingdom could survive. Lorena moved closer to Orlan's entry. The fresco behind her remained still. It had already given the motion. Now the paper showed what men did with that motion afterward. Where were sealed survivors taken? To temporary ash stations until their identities could be reconciled. That is not a place. The column moved with the chronicler corps. Hadren's eyes narrowed. Who commanded it? The Royal Chronicle Office. You. I supervised historical recovery. Lorena touched the lower margin. Orlan was wounded, conscious, and carrying a child when your men received him. What did historical recovery require from him? Selrick's gaze shifted to her fingers. Agreement. Hadren looked at him. Agreement to what? To the approved sequence. That the Southern Companies secured the ridge. That civilians had already been lost before royal arrival. That your wounds came from breaking the enemy line. Orlan had survived the fire only to be told survival required surrendering what he saw. And if he refused? Lorena asked. Then his statement remained sealed. His statement, she said. Or the man. Selrick closed the ledger halfway. Battlefield witnesses often died before reconciliation was complete. Hadren stopped the cover with one armored hand. You will not close another record while I am reading it. He still did not free Lorena or apologize for calling her work treason. The lower page loosened beneath his hand. A transfer strip slid into view. Orlan's line continued past the ash recovery column. Statement rejected. Civilian testimony withheld. Physical survivor retained for secondary review. Lorena's breath caught. Retained where? The destination had been scraped, but the pressure of the receiving seal remained in the paper. Hadren angled the page toward the ember lamps. A crest appeared beneath the ash. A dragon claw closed around a broken paintbrush. Lorena knew the mark. Every royal artist knew it. It belonged to the sealed pigment vault beneath the Hall of Painted Victories. Every royal painter knew that vault. Pigments went down there named. They came back approved. The final handler line opened below it. Receiving authority. Master of Royal Pigments. Handla Zeal. Selrick Dun. Orlan had not been sent there to heal. He had been sent there to be made usable. He had been brought beneath the hall that later painted him out of history. Orlan Veyl had been carried out of Embervale alive and brought beneath the hall that later painted him dead. Hadren ordered the pigment vault opened. Selrick closed the ash recovery ledger with deliberate care. The vault is not subject to public judgment. Its contents belong to the Royal Chronicle Office and the master painters authorized by the Crown. Lorena looked toward the black marble floor. Every royal painter knew the vault lay beneath the central victory arch. No apprentice was permitted inside. Pigment requests entered through sealed drawers and returned in dragonhide jars marked with approved battle names. Pigments went down there named. They came back approved. Hadren faced the guards beside the western pillar. Open the lower stair. Selrick stepped between them and the hidden door. Majesty, raw royal pigment contains dragon-scale dust, battlefield ash, and unstable memory binders. Opening the vault during a contested hearing risks contaminating every victory in this hall. Then the hall was already contaminated when you brought a living witness beneath it. Retained witnesses were handled according to historical preservation law. Lorena heard the phrase for what it was. A body reduced to material before death had finished with it. Hadren placed one armored hand against the carved dragon crest in the floor. The stone responded to his heat and divided along an invisible seam. Cold air rose from below, not the air of a grave. The air of a workshop sealed too long. The stair descended beneath the painted victories into a chamber lined with black iron shelves. Dragonhide jars filled every wall, each marked with a battle, a date, and a batch number. Ash-locked basins stood beneath copper pipes. Hundreds of brushes hung bristle-down from silver hooks. Many had dried black. Lorena entered behind Hadren with the guards still close enough to seize her. Her banishment remained lawful. The king had brought her below because she could read the materials, not because he had restored her name. Selric followed last. "You are allowing an accused painter into a sealed royal process," he said. Hadren did not turn. "She is the only person here who knows what these marks mean." Lorena stopped beside the first shelf. "Battle ash," she said. "Dragon scale dust. Heat binder. Witness pigment." Hadren looked at her. "Witness pigment?" Selric answered. "A preservation term. Material gathered from objects held by battlefield survivors. Clothing, weapons, personal ash. It stabilizes movement in official frescoes." Lorena lifted one jar toward the ember lamp. A name had been scraped from beneath the batch number. Not fully. The first letter remained. They were not only taking objects. Selric's expression stayed controlled. Unstable witnesses sometimes surrendered personal material in exchange for release from the recovery column. Surrendered? They consented to historical extraction. Lorena found the consent mark beneath the jar. It was not a signature. It was a chronicler seal pressed where a witness name should have been. Hadren moved along the shelves. Each battle represented in the hall had a corresponding pigment batch below it. Noble advances carried bright iron red. Royal victories carried ember gold. Civilian losses appeared in gray washes, so thin they nearly disappeared beneath the heroic figures painted above. The hall had not merely displayed a proved history. It had processed the people who contradicted it into colors safe enough to survive. Hadren stopped before the Ember Vale section. 3 shelves bore the battle name. Southern Ridge, Enemy Breach, Royal Wing Triumph. No shelf mentioned the civilian road. Lorena searched the lower row. A single jar had been turned backward. She rotated it carefully. Batchmark, EV South 17. Source status, retained physical witness. Extraction purpose, Royal Movement Correction. The source name had been blackened. Lorena tilted the jar toward the light. Pigment clung to the glass in dark copper streaks. Within it, dragon-scale dust caught the heat and shifted once, preserving the smallest fragment of motion. A hand closing around a child's torn sleeve. The Veyl wedding band flashed across one painted finger. Hadren's breath changed. Orlan. Selric did not deny the identification. Movement fragments cannot establish the condition of the source after processing. Lorena placed the jar back with both hands. What did extraction take from him? Heat memory, command response, physical contact with the royal wing. You used what he remembered. We stabilized the king's official image. Hadren looked upward, though stone separated them from the hall. My official image shows me breaking the enemy line. The kingdom required a conquest. I was shielding civilians. The kingdom required strength. And Orlan? Selric's voice remained measured. He refused the approved account. His movement was therefore separated from his testimony and retained as usable historical material. Lorena stared at the jars. Orlan had been wounded, questioned, and stripped of the motion that proved what he saw. The hall kept his hand, his heat, his obedience to Hadren's command, but removed his name from the scene. Hadren reached for the Royal Wing Triumph batch. Lorena caught his wrist before he touched it. Do not break the seal. His eyes dropped to her hand. Years earlier, he had stood barebacked in her studio and trusted those fingers near every scar. Now her touch carried no intimacy. Only warning. If you expose raw-scale pigment to royal heat, she said, it will return the strongest preserved movement into whatever surface received the batch. Hadren withdrew his hand. Where was this used? Lorena followed the batch number through the vault register carved directly into the shelf. The destination was not her condemned fresco. It was the enormous central arch above the throne, the official image of Hadren standing uninjured beneath a perfect golden wing while Ember Vale burned behind him. Batch EV South 17. Source, Orlan Veyl. Applied location, Dragon King's heroic wing. Lorena looked toward the ceiling. The greatest symbol of Hadren's invincible victory had been painted with movement extracted from the wounded man he failed to keep in history. The central arch above Hadren's throne had never belonged entirely to him. Lorena returned from the pigment vault with the batch number written across her palm in charcoal. EV, South, 17. The same mark appeared beneath the golden wing, painted over Hadren's official victory at Ember Vale. Selric remained beside the lower stair as guards resealed the vault behind him. Applied pigment cannot be separated from royal iconography without damaging the hall, he said. The arch has carried the kingdom's victory for 12 years. Lorena looked up at the perfect painted dragon wing. It has carried Orlan's movement for 12 years. Material source does not determine historical meaning. You removed his name and kept what his body did. We preserved a usable fragment. Hadren descended from the dais. His banishment order for Lorena still rested beneath the royal seal. No one had returned her commission. The guards remained near enough to take her beyond the ash gate if he ended the inquiry. "How do we test the arch?" he asked. Selric answered first. "We do not. Disturbing a finished victory image violates chronicler law." Hadren looked at Lorena. She hated that part of her still recognized the question in his eyes before he spoke. Years of painting him had taught her the difference between command, suspicion, and fear. This was fear, not of the fresco, of what his own body might remember. "Do not heat the entire arch," Lorena said. "The royal fire would wake every movement bound into the gold. Touch only the source line beneath the wing." Selric moved toward the throne. An accused painter cannot direct alteration of a royal image. "She is not altering it," Hadren said. "She is identifying what you used." He still had not called her innocent. Lorena climbed the narrow scaffolding beside the arch. A court painter handed her a bone-handled blade, though his fingers resisted releasing it. She scraped one line of gold from beneath the painted wing. Black copper appeared below. Not underpainting. Witness pigment. The mark matched the streaks inside Orlan's jar. Lorena mixed a small basin of ash water and pressed it against the exposed line. Dragon-scale dust beneath the surface stirred toward the nearest source of heat. Hadren stood directly below. "Remove your gauntlet," she said. His gaze sharpened. "The pigment needs living royal heat, not armor warmed by braziers." For a moment, neither moved. Lorena remembered another room, another request. "Take off the armor." Then he had obeyed, because he trusted her to paint scars no one else was permitted to see. Now he removed only one gauntlet. Not trust. Evidence. Hadren placed his bare palm against the black copper line. The arch did not flare. The gold darkened slowly around his hand. The painted heroic wing shifted. Not forward into conquest. Downward. Its great golden span curved toward the ground as if shielding something beneath it. Selric spoke from below. "Movement displacement. The source pigment is responding to the king's current posture." Lorena watched the angle of the painted joints. "No, that wing is following the old wound." Hadren's shoulders tightened. A line of ember light traced beneath his armor, beginning at his ribs and climbing toward his left shoulder blade. The location of his largest scar. The arch continued. The painted Hadren did not stand uninjured over fallen enemies. His body turned away from the breach. His damaged wing folded around Orlan, and the children while noble riders moved toward the ridge without looking back. The gold had hidden the retreat for 12 years. Orlan's extracted movement restored it. His painted hand appeared beneath Hadren's wing, gripping the broken spear that had already pierced the king's side. Orlan pulled the weapon away from the children. Then another movement emerged from beneath the official paint. A second spear fell from the burning wall. It was aimed at Orlan. Hadren turned between them. The weapon struck beneath his shoulder. The painted wing tore open. The ember line across the present king's back burned so brightly that he tore his hand from the arch. Lorena descended one scaffold step. That is where the scar came from. Hadren stared at the wall. The official account claimed enemy steel marked him while he broke the central line. Selric's mural showed him receiving the wound upright, surrounded by defeated soldiers. The witness movement showed something else. Hadren had been kneeling. He had taken the spear meant for Lorena's husband. A fragment of memory moved through his face. "Orlan told me the smallest child could not run," he said. Lorena gripped the scaffold rail. Hadren's voice had lost its royal distance. He asked me to hold the wing open while he carried her. You remembered him. I remembered the hand, not the name. Selric stepped beneath the arch. Battle memory attaches names after suggestion. Lorena identified the ring before the king recovered the event. Hadren looked down at him. You removed the name from every record I was given. I protected the command structure after noble withdrawal. You protected the men who left us. I protected the army that remained after Ember Vale. Lorena descended to the floor. You let Hadren remember the scar as conquest because protection would have required naming who abandoned the children. Selric's expression did not change. A king's body belongs to public meaning. Hadren's face closed again, but not before Lorena saw the wound beneath the anger. And Orlan's body? She asked. What did that belong to? The witness pigment answered through the exposed black copper line. Not with a face. Not with a voice. With a processing mark hidden beneath the gold. Primary movement extracted. Source remained conscious. Secondary pigment session authorized. Lorena looked toward the sealed stair beneath the hall. Orlan had survived the first extraction. Selric had sent him back into the pigment process a second time. The second pigment session had not been ordered to preserve Orlan's movement. It had been ordered to remove what remained of it. The processing mark beneath the central arch glowed once, then settled into the black copper line Lorena had exposed. Hadren stood below it with one bare hand still darkened by witness pigment. Open the secondary session record, he said. Selric remained beside the sealed stair. That record is not attached to the victory arch. Secondary extraction belongs to internal correction procedure. Then internal correction has been painted over my throne for 12 years. The procedure stabilized the image the kingdom required. Hadren's gaze hardened. Open it. He had still not torn Lorena's banishment order. He had not returned her name to the hall. Each command he gave protected the inquiry before it protected the woman whose truth had begun it. Lorena did not mistake movement for redemption. A narrow panel beneath the arch released under royal heat. Inside lay a strip of dragon hide coated in dried ash pigment. Unlike the ledgers above, it carried no heroic title. Source: Lorena Veyl. First extraction: royal wing contact. Secondary session: contradiction removal. Lorena read the final phrase aloud. Contradiction removal. Selric folded his hands behind his back. Repeated movement under battlefield shock can produce unstable visual memory. Secondary processing separates politically unreliable motion from usable royal action. You mean it stripped out what he refused to change? Lorena said. It removed contamination. From a living man. From a historical source. Hadren looked at him. When did a witness become a source? When he refused reconciliation. The answer entered the hall without shame. Lorena climbed the lower scaffold again and examined the black copper seam. The first extraction had preserved Orlan's hand, pulling the spear away and carrying the child. The secondary mark ran in the opposite direction, toward a gray section of the mural where fleeing civilians had been reduced to smoke. They used the second session to thin the civilian movement, she said. Selric did not deny the technique. Unverified bodies cannot dominate a royal victory composition. Bodies? Hadren asked. They were children. They were visual disorder. Hadren's dragonfire tightened beneath his skin. Lorena saw the heat rise along his throat, but he did not strike Selric or order him seized. Anger was easier than responsibility. Hadren had signed the hall's authority into law after Ember Vale. Selric had built his system inside powers the king considered necessary. How is contradiction removed? Hadren asked. Selric's voice remained clinical. The source is placed before an ash-locked basin. Dragon-scale dust is heated against the body's residual command response. Each repeated movement transfers into pigment until the unwanted sequence no longer answers. Lorena's fingers went cold. You made him repeat it. The session required consistency. You made a wounded man carry the same child again and again until the movement left him, until the movement could be separated from the account. Hadren looked toward the scar beneath his shoulder. Orlan had pulled the child through fire once. The hall had forced him to do it until history could keep the king's wing and discard the civilian beneath it. Did he survive the second session? Lorena asked. Selric turned toward her. Survival is not recorded in pigment procedure. That is not an answer. It is the only answer the archive preserves. Lorena examined the dragon hide strip. Painter marks were cut along the lower edge. Pressure, heat, repetition, release. The final mark had been scraped, but the blade used to remove it left a crescent-shaped groove. She knew that groove. Court painters used it to indicate a source who could no longer reproduce the required motion. Movement exhausted, she said. Hadren stepped closer. What does that mean? It means his body stopped answering the command. Selric said. Or it means the memory stabilized. No. Lorena traced the groove without touching it. A stabilized source receives a closed flame. This mark means the motion failed before approval. The lower panel warmed. Not because Lorena commanded it. Hadren's exposed hand remained close enough for the old royal heat to reach the record. A final line emerged. Secondary extraction incomplete. Source collapsed during command repetition. Medical transfer requested. Chronicler retention applied. Lorena read the words twice. He collapsed, and you kept him. His testimony remained unresolved. He needed a healer. He remained an active historical risk. Hadren's face became still. Where was the medical transfer denied? Selric looked toward the throne. The answer was not in the panel. It was in the gray pigment above Hadren's left shoulder, where the official arch showed enemy ash curling like smoke around his perfect wing. Lorena scraped the gray with the bone-handled blade. Beneath it appeared a second batch mark. EV, South, 17B, Disposition, Unusable Witness Residue. Applied location, battlefield ash surrounding the royal figure. For 12 years, the hall had displayed Orlan twice. His courage had been used to paint Hadren's heroic wing. What remained after the second extraction had been ground into the ash beneath the king's feet. Hadren ordered the gray pigment cut away from beneath his painted feet. Selric stepped in front of the central arch. Damage that layer, and the royal victory loses authentication. It already lost truth. A damaged image can still govern. A disputed image cannot. Hadren looked toward Lorena. Remove it. The command did not restore her commission. It made her an accused painter, ordered to dismantle the symbol she had once been banished for contradicting. Lorena climbed the scaffold with the bone-handled blade. The gray pigment came away differently from ordinary ash wash. It resisted in thin, elastic strips, held together by dragon-scale dust, and something darker beneath it. Not blood, royal binding lacquer. She stopped cutting. This layer was authenticated after the pigment dried. Selric answered from below. Every central victory receives crown lacquer, not over battlefield ash. Lorena scraped the edge until a seal appeared beneath the gray. A dragon crown enclosed by a ring of flame. Hadren's royal authorization. The king stared at it. I did not approve Orlan's name. No, Selric said. You approved the completed arch. Lorena descended one step. When? Before the Veyl Peace Assembly. Hadren's face tightened. He remembered signing it. Lorena saw that before he spoke. Selric continued, with the calm of a man placing each stone back into a wall. The noble houses required an uncontested victory before they renewed their military oath. You ordered the hall completed in 9 days. Historical sources still under review were retained until the image could be authenticated. Orlan was one of those sources. He was an unresolved contradiction. He was a wounded man. He was both. Hadren looked at the seal beneath the ash. What authority did my authentication give you? The right to preserve unfinished material until the royal image was stable. Preserve? Lorena cut deeper. A narrow strip of parchment had been sealed into the lacquer beneath Hadren's painted boot. The writing had blurred where gray pigment entered the fibers, but the central order remained visible. Medical transfer requested. Historical source unresolved. Release delayed pending royal image completion. Crown authentication received. Lorena's hand went still. Hadren had not written Orlan's name. He had signed the condition that kept every unnamed witness below the hall until Selric finished using them. You did not need to know who he was, Lorena said. You gave the image authority over the body. Hadren did not deny it. I demanded the arch before the peace assembly, and Selric made sure nothing living could contradict it. Selric lifted his chin. Had the noble houses fractured after Veyl, the border war would have continued. The image secured 12 years of peace. By putting Orlan beneath my feet. By giving the kingdom one history instead of 50 competing wounds. Hadren's dragonfire moved beneath his skin, but he kept it contained. You told me the hall preserved victory. It did. You did not tell me it retained witnesses. You did not ask what seamless history required. The answer struck because it was true. Hadren had wanted the hall finished. He had wanted the noble cavalry shown advancing, his wings shown unbroken, and Ember Vale remembered as conquest rather than rescue. Selric had supplied exactly what the king demanded. Lorena returned to the parchment. A second line remained hidden beneath the authentication seal. She loosened it without applying heat. Witness source retained after completion. Medical request expired. Disposition authorized under Master Pigment Law. Hadren read over her shoulder. Expired? Selric said. The request belonged to a living treatment window. Once that window closed, the archive could no longer release the source as a patient. You waited until he could no longer qualify for care, Lorena said. I completed the image under royal deadline. Hadren's bare hand closed around the scaffold rail. The metal warmed. Lorena moved the parchment away before the heat could wake the pigment again. Do not destroy the order because you hate seeing your seal on it. His eyes met hers. For a moment, he was the man who had once removed his armor in her studio and trusted her with the shape of his fear. Then the king returned. What remains beneath the lacquer? Lorena examined the layer around Orlan's batch mark. There should be a source release stroke. Every witness pigment receives one when the body or personal material leaves the vault. She found no release stroke. Only a short dragged line beneath the royal seal. Not made by a brush. Made by a fingertip coated in black copper. The movement memory inside the pigment answered the pressure trapped there. A hand dragged across wet lacquer. One final motion. Not Orlan carrying a child. Not Orlan pulling a spear away. Orlan writing while his body failed. Lorena angled the mark toward the ember lamps. The dragged line formed 3 uneven letters. Lor. Her name. Unfinished. Hadren stared at the mark. Selric's control finally narrowed into something harder. Residual motion has no linguistic authority. Lorena looked at him. He knew this arch would be sealed. He knew only that pigment surrounded him. He tried to leave my name where the king would stand. Hadren's face changed. Orlan had not died thinking Lorena had forgotten him. He had died trying to put her name inside the history that removed his. The lacquer beneath the unfinished letters split. A concealed completion order appeared. Royal image authenticated. Witness source unreleased. Final disposition. Incorporated into hall foundation. Lorena looked down at the black marble beneath the throne. Orlan had not only been painted into Hadren's wing and ground into the ash beneath his feet. What remained of him had been sealed inside the foundation supporting the entire hall of painted victories. The unfinished letters beneath Hadren's seal changed what Lorena wanted from the hall. She no longer wanted the mural corrected. She wanted the floor opened. Break the foundation, Hadren ordered. Selric moved before the masons could approach the throne. The hall foundation is sovereign memorial ground. Every military oath renewed after Ember Vale was sworn beneath these arches. Disturb the base and you invalidate the victories attached to it. Hadren looked at the black marble under his boots. Then those victories were attached to a man you refused to release. They were attached to royal stability. Lorena descended from the scaffold. No one opens it yet. Hadren turned toward her. Your husband is beneath this floor. I learned what private authority did to him. The guards remained beside her. Her banishment still existed. The king had not returned her name to the hall, and she would not let grief make her grateful for an inquiry that still belonged entirely to him. If you open the foundation behind closed doors, she said, Selric will call whatever you find contaminated. The court will issue another approved account before dawn. Selric's expression sharpened. You want civilians inside a sovereign archive. I want witnesses where witness ash was hidden. The hall cannot become a public spectacle. It already is one. You only object to the public seeing how it was made. Hadren looked toward the bronze doors. Opening them would expose the king who authenticated the arch, demanded a clean victory, and allowed unnamed bodies to remain beneath royal images. Open the hall, he said. Selric faced him. Majesty, to the families of Ember Vale, to surviving civilians, to the painters removed from these walls. Lorena did not thank him. He had chosen exposure only after the evidence reached beneath his throne. Cold daylight entered as the bronze doors opened. People beyond the outer court saw Lorena under guard, the damaged arch, and the king's authorization seal exposed beneath the ash. Selric raised his voice. No foundation layer may be interpreted without chronicler authority. Raw memorial material has no legal identity until the crown assigns it one. Lorena looked at the crest sealing the central arch, a dragon crown enclosed by flame. That crest is not only authentication, she said. It is the binding layer. Hadren stepped nearer. Explain. Royal lacquer carries the image downward into every ash-lime course beneath it. If the foundation is broken while the crest remains, loose movement will be pulled back into the nearest approved scene. Selric said, an untested workshop theory. Lorena pointed to the black copper seam running from Orlan's batch into the floor. That is why his last movement appeared beneath your seal. The hall was built to keep contradictions inside royal meaning. What stops it? Hadren asked. Remove the crest before opening the foundation. Selric's composure tightened. Removing it renders the victory arch unauthored. It strips the image of sovereign protection and dissolves every oath attached to it. Hadren looked at Lorena. And the pigment? It stops belonging to the palace. For years, he had allowed the hall to make his body larger than truth. Now reaching Orlan required surrendering ownership of the image that made him invincible. The southern houses renewed allegiance beneath that crest, Selric warned. Remove it, and they may withdraw troops, taxes, and succession recognition. Hadren's scar burned beneath his armor. He had once taken a spear meant for Orlan. Later he accepted a history that turned the wound into conquest and the man into pigment. Do not remove it for me, Lorena said. His eyes met hers. Remove it, because no king should own the movement of the people who bled beside him. Hadren drew the ceremonial blade from his belt and offered it to her. You painted the truth. You banished me for it. Yes. The admission did not erase the sentence. Lorena accepted the blade, climbed the scaffold, and placed its edge beneath the dragon crown. Selric called to the archive guards, protect the royal image. No one moved. Hadren's voice stopped them. Let her cut. Lorena pried the crest from the arch. The gold lacquer cracked without flame. The dragon crown fell into her hand, heavier than it looked. Across the hall, every painted Hadren lost its ember gold halo. No image attacked Selric. No spirit emerged. The walls simply ceased answering to royal ownership. A seam opened beneath the throne. The masons lifted the first slab. Below it lay ash-lime blocks threaded with copper tags. Names had been scraped from most of them, but one narrow wedding band remained embedded in the nearest course. Lorena knelt. The veil flame was still visible. Beside the ring, dragon-scale dust shifted through the mortar and formed 4 lines. Foundation source retained. Witness identity withheld. Royal image stabilized. Release condition unmet. Hadren read the final line. What condition? Lorena looked at the crest in her hand, then at the royal marks still fixed above every other victory arch. Orlan was not bound by one image alone. The entire hall still carried Hadren's name. To release what remained beneath the foundation, every royal crest would have to come down. The first royal crest lay in Lorena's hands, but the remaining arches still belonged to Hadren. Gold dragons crowned every victory in the hall. Each crest carried military oaths, noble recognition, and the legal claim that the movement beneath it belonged to the king. Selric stood beside the open foundation. One crest may be treated as damaged evidence, he said. Remove the rest, and this hall ceases to be a royal archive. Lorena placed the fallen crest on the black marble. That is the point. Hadren looked along the arches built in his name. What happens when they come down? The pigments stop returning every buried movement to your approved image, Lorena said. The foundation can release what it has retained. And the victories? They remain painted. Without royal authority, Selric said. Without legal sequence. Without the oaths that keep the southern houses bound to the crown. Hadren's eyes stayed on the arch above Ember Vale. The painted king still stood there, but the golden halo was gone. Without the crest, he looked smaller. Human. Selric stepped closer to him. You demanded a history strong enough to hold the kingdom together. Do not destroy it because one widow dislikes the cost. Lorena faced Hadren. He is right about one thing. You demanded it. Selric had altered reports, retained witnesses, and processed contradiction into usable color. But Hadren had ordered clean walls, unbroken wings, and victories noble houses could salute without shame. He had not known Orlan's name. He had made the system hungry for men like him. Remove every crest, Hadren said. Selric's voice sharpened. You cannot dissolve 12 years of sovereign history during a public disturbance. Hadren looked toward the citizens standing beyond the bronze doors. It became public when the hall used their bodies. Lorena did not climb the scaffold alone. Former court painters entered from the outer passage, men and women whose names had been removed after refusing approved battle sequences. Civilian families from Ember Vale followed them into the hall. They carried ladders, cloths, and tools rather than banners. Selric watched them approach the walls. This is archive seizure. No, Lorena said. This is the first time the people inside the paintings have been allowed near them. One by one, the crests came down. The siege of Red Hollow lost its royal flame. The Northern Wing Triumph lost its dragon crown. The Ash River Conquest lost the gold seal that declared the king's movement more important than everybody around it. The walls did not collapse. They changed ownership. Under the first removed crest, a painted supply cart turned away from soldiers and toward a burning village. Under another, wounded enemy children appeared behind what had been painted as smoke. A noble commander's heroic charge separated into two movements, his horse riding forward while his men remained behind to carry civilians from a broken bridge. The pigment did not judge. It returned motion previously forced beneath approved meaning. Selric moved toward the archive guards. Close the bronze doors. No further unverified image leaves this hall. Hadren blocked him. You no longer command the doors. I am royal chronicler. You are the man whose seal retained living witnesses beneath my throne. I preserve the kingdom from historical fracture. You preserve the houses that abandoned my people. Selric's composure held. And what will replace me? Grieving families choosing which movements flatter their dead? Painters declaring every scar sacred? A king cannot govern 50 versions of one battle. Lorena lowered the crest from the final western arch. No, but neither can one chronicler own every version. The exposed foundation brightened beneath the open floor. Copper tags released from the ash lime blocks. Names appeared where scraping had removed them. Civilians, wounded soldiers, messengers, servants, and witnesses absorbed into royal images. Orlan's name remained nearest the throne. The mortar around his wedding band loosened. Hadren knelt beside it. A final processing strip emerged from the foundation. Source: Lorena Veyl. Medical release denied. Secondary extraction terminated. Witness identity incorporated. Foundation binding completed under chronicler seal. Selric's mark appeared below the final line. Lorena read it without looking at him. You did not only keep him until the mural was finished. He was already dying. You made the image more urgent than the treatment. The peace assembly was 3 days away. Hadren rose slowly. And I made the peace assembly more urgent than the truth. Selric turned toward the nobles. Listen to him. He will invalidate every oath sworn beneath these walls because a widow has taught him to despise his own victories. Hadren removed the royal clasp from his armor. He placed it beside the fallen crests. My victories do not need men buried beneath them. The southern nobles began leaving the hall. Some tore oath ribbons from their sleeves. Others warned that military recognition would end before sunset. Hadren let them go. Lorena watched the political cost move through the doors. He had chosen truth only after his own image became unbearable. But he was finally allowing that choice to cost him something real. When the last crest came down, the foundation released Orlan's copper ring. Lorena caught it in both hands. No spiritrose. No voice filled the hall. Only the physical weight of the thing history had refused to return. Hadren removed his armor before the exposed wall. The court fell silent, as every scar Lorena had once painted became visible again. Painted as it was, he said. Lorena closed her fingers around Orlan's ring. Taking off your armor is not the same as giving up control. What remains? She looked at the living ember fresco, then toward the open bronze doors. The painting leaves the palace. Selric's face hardened. Royal history cannot be removed from royal ground. Lorena lifted the first fallen crest. Then it was never history. It was property. She turned toward Hadren. If you want the truth painted, let the people decide where it hangs. By sunrise, the living ember fresco no longer faced Hadren's throne. Royal masons removed the wall in wide stone sections, supporting each piece with iron frames so the dragon-scale pigment would not fracture. The work took hours. No magic lifted the burden. Painters, laborers, and families from Veyl carried the recorded battle through the bronze doors together. Selric stood under guard while the first section entered the outer court. "You are dismantling the legal memory of the kingdom," he said. Lorena walked beside the painted children beneath Hadren's damaged wing. "No. We are removing it from the only man who was allowed to decide what it meant." The fresco was installed in an abandoned public workshop near the Eastern Market, where ordinary people could enter without noble invitation. Lorena refused the royal banner, offered for the entrance. She removed every surviving crest from the stone before allowing the first visitor inside. The atelier would not belong to her alone. Survivors, painters, battlefield healers, civilian families, and one crown archivist without authority over removal or correction formed its first council. Every movement shown by dragon-scale pigment would be compared with field reports, witness accounts, and the names previously erased from public record. No image could be covered without public notice. No witness could become material without consent. No king could declare a scar historically inconvenient. Hadren signed the charter in the outer court. The noble houses of the southern companies refused to attend. Several withdrew military oaths and accused him of allowing grief to govern the crown. Selric's supporters called the atelier a hall of disputed wounds. Hadren did not close it. He released the ash recovery ledgers and ordered every retained witness name restored to the public casualty record. The order could not return bodies, years, or voices. It only ended the court's right to pretend those lives had never reached the battlefield alive. Selric was tried before royal judges, civilian representatives, and removed court painters. He never confessed. He argued that Hadren's reign had survived because the hall gave the kingdom one usable past. He insisted that noble desertion, civilian panic, and contradictory survival accounts would have shattered the peace after Veyl. Lorena testified without calling him monstrous. She described what his system did. It separated motion from identity. It preserved useful courage and discarded inconvenient witnesses. It turned people into color, then called the result stability. Selric was stripped of chronicler authority and confined pending judgment for unlawful witness retention, denial of medical release, and alteration of royal casualty records. Hadren did not claim Selric had acted alone. Before the court, he admitted that he had demanded an invincible victory, authenticated the completed arch, and punished Lorena for painting what he did not want the kingdom to see. "I did not know Orlan Veyl was beneath my hall," he said. "But I created a court where not knowing protected me." The admission cost him more than sympathy. The southern houses withdrew troops from 2 border passes. Hadren sent royal forces to replace them and opened their conduct at Veyl to public review. His kingdom became less orderly. His throne became less admired. His history became harder to control. Months later, Lorena placed Orlan's copper ring beneath the restored civilian section of the fresco. His name appeared beside the movement the court had once used without him. Lorena Veyl, civilian shield survivor, carried one child from the southern road, protected by the Dragon King, retained beneath royal history, returned by public record. Lorena did not paint him as flawless. The fresco showed his fear, his failing body, and the way his hands shook while carrying the child. Courage did not require the absence of terror. That lesson changed the rest of the atelier. Victories gained wounded soldiers, frightened messengers, abandoned families, broken weapons, and commanders arriving too late. Hadren remained inside the paintings, but no longer as the only body large enough to matter. He visited without ceremony. At first, Lorena allowed him to stand among the public visitors. He did not approach her easel or request private hours. One evening after the workshop emptied, Hadren removed his armor and placed it beside the door. The scars across his chest and back remained exactly as Lorena remembered them. He stood before an unfinished canvas. "I am not asking you to repair my image," he said. "Good. I am asking whether you will paint what my body carried." Lorena cleaned a brush without looking at him. "You trusted me with your scars once, then banished me when I painted what they meant." "Yes. You chose the hall." "Yes. And now you think standing bare proves you have changed." "No." The answer made her look up. Hadren did not cover himself, but neither did he offer vulnerability as payment. "Being seen is not the same as surrendering control," he said. "You taught me that." Lorena set the brush down. "What would I be permitted to paint?" Whatever is true. And if the truth makes the king look afraid, then paint the fear. If it shows you protecting someone your army abandoned, paint who was abandoned. If it shows Orlan beside you, Hadren's gaze moved to the copper ring beneath the fresco. Then his name must be larger than mine. Lorena studied him for a long time. She did not forgive the banishment because he had opened the hall. She did not forget that he had chosen image over her truth. But he had given up ownership of the walls, allowed the noble houses to leave, and entered her atelier without command. She picked up the brush. Turn around. Hadren obeyed. Lorena began with the largest scar beneath his shoulder blade, not as evidence of conquest. As the place where steel reached him because he stepped between Orlan and death, Hadren remained still while she painted. When the first line was complete, he did not ask whether it made him look powerful. He asked, "Can you see him in it?" Lorena looked toward Orlan's restored name. Yes. Only then did she place her free hand against Hadren's back. Not because the king had earned possession of her grief, because at last he had stopped asking history to hide what love and war had cost them both.